What if the biggest threat to the European Union isn't internal politics or economic stagnation, but a coordinated strategy from the world's top three powers? It all started subtly tariff tweaks here, diplomatic reroutes there. But behind the scenes, a seismic geopolitical shift has taken root. The United States, China, Russia, for their own reasons, are now exerting pressure in ways that don't just challenge the EU's position, they're fracturing it. Think about it. Is the European Union being systematically dismantled? Is this a power play for the next financial era? Drop a yes or no in the comments below. Do you believe the EU can withstand this level of coordinated pressure? Here on the Enoch Report, we break down events that shape markets, geopolitics, and the real future of power. Today, we're unpacking a situation that goes well beyond trade wars or diplomatic disputes. Because what's buried at the end of this video might change your understanding of why the US is shifting away from China and focusing its attention. Stay with us, because the deeper we go, the more you'll see we're looking at a strategic realignment that could redraw the map of global influence. Europe is now facing a rare three-front convergence pressure from America, attrition from Russia, and fragmentation driven by China. While the tactical tools differ, the objective is becoming increasingly clear. Weaken the EU by disassembling it from within. The United States targets Europe's financial backbone. Russia aims at its security periphery. And China's new approach undermines EU cohesion by bypassing Brussels entirely. Collectively, it's not just competition, strategic dismemberment. Let's start with the American strategy, a multi-pronged offensive to neutralize the EU as a rising threat. From Washington's perspective, the EU isn't just an ally, it's also a structural threat. The creation of the euro, back in 1999, wasn't just a monetary milestone, it was a symbolic shift toward financial independence. For decades, the US has relied on the petrodollar system to maintain global economic dominance. But Europe flirted with an alternative, the so-called petro. Flashback to the early 2000s, Germany's Merkel and Iraq's. Saddam Hussein reportedly held conversations about selling oil in euros instead of dollars. It wasn't just economic policy, it was geopolitical heresy to Washington. The US and UK, led by Bush and Blair, doubled down on Middle Eastern military presence soon after. Intentional or coincidental, the message was clear: don't mess with the dollar's domain. Today, that legacy shapes America's view and over-integrated. Financially strong Europe is a long-term challenger, not a partner. And that's why the US is now deploying heavy-hitting tools. Tariffs, financial legislation, and corporate tax reform, all designed to draw EU capital and industry away. While the US undermines European financial strength, Russia is targeting the continent's eastern flank and, indirectly, its security assurances. Let's break this down. Since 2022, Moscow has successfully consolidated control in the four eastern regions of Ukraine's Donbass. But that wasn't the finish line. Russia's trajectory aims south to Odessa and secure access to the Black Sea. Now imagine this. If Russia succeeds in linking its eastern conquests with Black Sea ports, it effectively completes a strategic arc across southern Ukraine. And this advance is now a bargaining chip. The US and Russia are quietly recalibrating priorities. In exchange for Washington's muted response to Russian advances, Moscow may offer concessions elsewhere, pulling back influence in Syria, or pressuring Turkey's stance on regional matters to foster a favorable environment for Israel. It's a site-to-site geopolitics exchange. But Europe is the collateral damage. If Russia cements expanded control in Ukraine, indirectly blessed by this informal deal-making, the EU's eastern security wall becomes indefensible. NATO-friendly governments will sense the limits of American support, driving fractures deeper within the alliance. One added twist: possible changes inside Ukraine itself. President Zelensky may find himself replaced, bypassed, even exiled, if Western appetite for prolonged confrontation fades. That scenario would unify Russian loyal forces and freeze the conflict for good. Whether in Crimea or Damascus, Russia profits from instability, Europe must endure. And that raises an unsettling conclusion. Russia's geopolitical gains are bought with Europe's vulnerability. China once championed a multipolar world and viewed the EU as its second pillar against US containment. That cooperation peaked during the 2018 US-China trade war. When Beijing pushed the China-EU investment agreement to attract European capital into its massive domestic market infrastructure, but things changed dramatically when EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen issued a direct challenge to Beijing. She demanded a binary choice: either continue buying Russian energy or gain full access to the European single market. China viewed this ultimatum as an unacceptable intrusion on its vital interests, particularly as U.S. fleets dominate the South China Sea, and China's energy lifelines through the Strait of Malacca remain exposed. China responded with calculation, not confrontation. Beijing now rejects any recognition of the EU's collective negotiating authority. Instead, it opts for a bilateral strategy, negotiating independently with individual member states. Countries like Hungary and Spain have become pilot cases, offering investment, trade benefits, and diplomatic prioritization on a first-come, first-served basis. China is incentivizing EU states to break from the bloc's unified stance. It's a classic version of the raise your hand to claim the prize tactic. Survival, not ideology, drives action. Member states now ask, what does Europe give me compared to what China offers? One example. Spain has resisted NATO's demand to increase military spending to 5% of GDP. Its rationale? Russia doesn't pose an existential threat, and elevated defense budgets depress domestic well-being. Interpretation. Varying threat perceptions in Europe are being amplified by China's bilateral outreach. The end effect is deeper centrifugal force, raveling EU unity from the inside out. If you're still watching, that tells us something. You're not here for surface-level news. You want clarity beneath the chaos. Here at Enoch Report, we deliver global insight others overlook. So make sure you click to follow our channel and turn on bell notifications. These aren't headlines. They're the front lines of our shared economic future. Few realize the sophistication behind America's current pressure play. It's not just tariffs, it's a comprehensive policy architecture. Consider what's being rolled out. Tariff walls targeting high-value EU exports. The Genius Act, aimed at tilting financial regulations in favor of US-based investments. The Big and Beautiful Act, a measure aimed squarely at extracting industrial production from Europe into the US. Here's how it works. Under tariff pressure, European business leaders begin contemplating alternatives. Enter stablecoins and alternative payment corridors, bypassing systems like SWIFT. Meanwhile, the US cuts corporate taxes, dropping rates from 21% to a proposed 15%, and markets itself as a safe haven for economic operations. That seductive narrative starts to look more appealing compared to Europe's energy instability, high tax burdens, and rising defense obligations. The story doesn't end there. The US is also making subtle moves to sideline other global financial hubs, like Singapore and Dubai, enforcing the dollar-centric order while weakening European capital formation. This results in both financial and industrial attrition from Europe, deliberately positioning the US as the safer, or lucrative base of operations in an age of geopolitical flux. All these dynamics are now cracking open the EU from the inside. First, there's the issue of perception. Eastern Europeans prioritize defense against Russia, while Western Europeans are more skeptical. This leads to divisions in defense spending, attitudes toward NATO, and levels of cooperation with Washington. Then comes the bilateral incentive game. The quicker a member state aligns with China, the faster it receives economic benefits, those undermining the EU's collective negotiating power. Finally, there's the cold, hard pressure of structural economics. High energy costs, regressive tax policies, and increasing deindustrialization are eroding the EU's internal cohesion. Citizens across the bloc are beginning to question the value of integration as industrial capacities migrate and consumer burdens rise. The result? Tensions that once simmered now threaten to boil over. Here's the key distinction. This isn't just tactical pressure. It's a coordinated, systemic dismantling process. The US isn't merely raising tariffs. It's executing an integrated play: tariffs, financial reforms, tax innovation, deliberately designed to pull Europe's economic nucleus westward. Russia isn't just defending its turf. It's betting on destabilization at Europe's core, trading security pieces on the Middle East board for long-term territorial advances toward the Black Sea and China. It's not cooperating with Brussels. It's actively undermining. Brussels rewarding those who break ranks and creating a new framework where Europe no longer speaks with one voice. 3 layers. 1 strategic result. A disassembled EU whose strength is now divisible, negotiable, and ultimately dispensable. Across finance, security, and industry, the European Union is now under structural assault from 3 sides. The US siphons capital through coordinated policy incentives. Russia fractures its physical security by expanding along Ukraine's southern coast, while leveraging gains across the Levant. China pulls member states toward bilateral alignment, touching off internal disunity through market temptation. And what's the through line? If the EU doesn't adapt with a unified external strategy and a credible internal redistribution mechanism, then its influence will diminish, gradually, decisively, and possibly permanently. I want to hear your thoughts, too. You think the EU is on the brink of breaking apart, or will it rebound stronger than ever? Drop your answer below. We read every comment. If this video gave you insight, don't stop at the like button. Subscribe and hit the bell right now. Timing matters, especially in a market and world that's being redrawn right in front of us. Stay informed, stay prepared. This is the Enoch Report.